Welcome, Jason, to Wealth Matters Podcast. How are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me, my friend.
It's my pleasure, Jason. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name, well, I'll give you my real name. Okay, it's Jason Wojciechowski, but because of Wojciechowski being half as long as the alphabet and
Right.
closest, yeah, I go with Wojo. It's just a little easier, so everyone knows me
Yeah,
as Jason Wojo.
that's what I saw. But yeah, wow.
Yes, and so, I'll tell you, man, I've been in business for a very long time. I didn't start off as an entrepreneur and a business owner. I started off thinking that the way to wealth was having a great job and making a lot of, having a corner office. And then I got into this thing called Lifeonaire. We can talk more about that. And it totally changed absolutely everything for me. And now, with the help of a lot of my friends and being around the right people, I am now proud to say that I am officially unemployable and
Yeah,
I run my own business. Yeah.
that's awesome. You and I are same. I'm unemployable too
I love it.
for almost 6, 7 years now.
Yes. Awesome.
So you mentioned something life on air, and I know
Yeah.
the podcast is about that. So what is that? I want to be millionaire, not a life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this, and so I ask people that question, like, so when I share this message all over the country, and one of the first questions I ask is like, hey, who here wants to be a millionaire? All these hands go up in the room.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I'll say, okay, I have a very, very bold prediction. And I know you're going to think I'm nuts, but my prediction is that once you hear about this Lifeonaire thing, you'd actually, believe it or not, rather be a Lifeonaire than a millionaire. And here's the truth. I know a lot of millionaires that have nothing to do with life, but I
Yeah,
know a lot of Lifeonaires that are millionaires. And so it's kind of like, I know a lot of Lifeonaires that are millionaires. I know very few millionaires that are Lifeonaires. That's probably the best way to say it.
that's really interesting.
Yeah. And so the reason is, many people are, especially with the topic of your podcast as well, we're building wealth, right? But if
Yes,
we look at it, wealth isn't unidimensional. It's not just the amount of dollars in your bank account. It's just not
exactly.
your 401k or things like that. And so we try. And so the whole purpose of Lifeonaire is like, hey, I want you to have the money. I want you to have time, freedom, financial freedom, all of those things. But let's also make sure this is fitting into the bigger picture of what you really want most. And so instead of being a millionaire, we say, hey, a millionaire has a lot of money. A Lifeonaire has a lot of life. And so that's where the word came from.
Interesting. And even though this podcast is geared or focused towards building wealth, but when I say building wealth, is same thing that you got to have mental wealth, which is your mental well-being, as well as life around it, and the physical wealth, which is your
Yeah,
health, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
all of this go together. You can't be just a millionaire and not have fun or do not enjoy your life, right?
True. So true. I see people all around me and they tell me, hey, I'll worry about the life stuff later. Like, just show me
Yeah,
how to make money now. And I'll tell you, some of those stories turned out very, very tragically when, for instance, their health suffers because now they're
yeah,
working all the time and they have a heart attack, or their wife wants a divorce because they're never around anymore, or they don't know their kids anymore because they're out in the office or in the field all day working. And so there's no, Patrick Morley said no amount of success at work will ever compensate for a failure at home. And so that's where, I'm with you. I'm with you.
never. Yeah. So, but you gave pretty good examples, and I can relate to some of these examples with some of the people I know that they're like, oh yeah, I got to work. Work is so important. I got to make money to feed my family. But I'm like, you got to be able to enjoy the time with family once your kids grow up. Yeah, they wouldn't even talk to you. They wouldn't have time for you now, right?
True.
And you're not going to be able to enjoy your after 50 or 60. That's what they think, right? I will have enough money, so I wouldn't have to work when I'm 60, and I can travel the world.
So true, man. What you just said is just 100% accurate. And, here's the thing too, like we sacrifice life so that someday when we can have it and we think that all of a sudden somewhere down the line we'll be able to enjoy life. It just doesn't happen that way. I'll tell you, I see people create monster businesses that just absolutely consume their life, and they say to themselves, and listen, I've been there too. I'm not going to say that I haven't gone down this path. And actually, in fact, I was that guy who said, show me how to make the money. And I paid some big prices, man. I'm divorced. I'm thankfully remarried to an incredible
Wow.
woman, but my wife, I'm divorced from my first wife. I had all kinds of, I lost my business. Like everything crashed and burned. And I learned that lesson because the money did not save me. And it was not what I thought it would be. And so many of us tell ourselves, hey, I'm just going to work hard for 1 year or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years and I'll retire and have a great life. I don't see it working that way, man. I coach some of the most successful people in the country, and that is not the pattern that works.
No, that's not the pattern that works. And I can relate, the same thing as you said. I was in the same boat as well before, I was hit by the truck, right? And I got laid off or fired in 2009. And I realized that, I don't want to work for a W-2 employer anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I can work as hard as possible. I can go as fast, but again, you are just a worker bee.
Oh yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point too, so I realized that I went to school, I believed that having, like I said earlier, a great life was and being wealthy was having a great job, great income. I went and got 2 bachelor's degrees. I got a master's degree. I got a PhD,
Oh, wow.
15 years of school, like literally 15 years of
That's
school.
crazy.
Man, I get my first job and I realized, man, I don't want to work for somebody else because of the reasons you're saying. Like, I'm just a cog in their wheel. I am completely dependent on them for what I work on, how much I work, how much I make, all these things, which drove me nuts. And that's what actually drove me into entrepreneurship and business ownership.
That's awesome. So just to remind my audience that I read the book Lifeonaire about a couple of years ago. I even met the author at one of the meetups. And I've been wanting to bring Steve Cook, who is the author of the book. Of course, he's traveling. So I was able to get Jason, who is the CEO of the Lifeonaire, on the podcast. So I want to ask Jason, how did Steve choose Lifeonaire as the name of the book?
Well, this. So Steve was a real estate coach back in Baltimore in the early 2000s, and his students kept coming to him and saying, "Steve, make me a millionaire. Make me a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire." And the reasons, interestingly, they were giving him were things like, "I want to be a millionaire so that I can be a better father, or I can be a better spouse," or all these reasons that, when you think about it, really have nothing to do with money. But Steve put it together. He's like, you know what? Everybody keeps saying they want to be a millionaire, but what they really want is the life that they think they need the money to experience. And he's like, what they really want to be is a Lifeonaire. And so this term Lifeonaire just stuck with him. He went out and he didn't even know what it meant. He didn't even know it was going to be anything yet. And he goes out and he starts this Lifeonaire organization based around the premise of helping people live great lives. So he started the company actually before he wrote the book.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And so he starts this company, and then he's like, and then people are like, Steve, you need to share this message. Like, we know it because we're your coaching students,
right?
But the general public needs to know about this message. And so Steve went about writing this Lifeonaire book. He got some input from another guy, Sean McCloskey, who helped with the idea of telling him, give him the idea to make it a story instead of just like kind of like a nonfiction book. And so Steve writes this book, and he and in it, it's a story, right? It's just a simple story. And I'll tell you, when we hear people talk about the book, they're like, "Oh my God, I thought you were talking to me. I thought this book was directly, you were stealing from my life," because it just resonated so much. And so that's how Steve got the message out to the general public. And we've been very blessed. The book's done really well. It's on Audible as well. And so people are listening to, and actually it's funny, one of our Lifeonaire students is the one who read the book for us on Audible.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that the book has become like that first experience to this whole way of living as a Lifeonaire that most people have. And that's really what gets that book. It's been compared to the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad in terms by Robert Kiyosaki, in terms of like the aha moment or the epiphany of a different way of looking at things. Now, we teach very different strategies, by the way, and it's very different in terms of like how we approach things. But in terms of like the impact of the book, that's kind of where it's been compared to. So it's an honor and a privilege to get to share this message through the book.
Yeah, and that's amazing that the book has been compared to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is like all-time number one bestseller. and it's one of my favorite book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. But I also consider Lifeonaire as similar to The Go Giver,
Yeah, yeah,
another great book, or The
that's a great book too.
Compounding Effect by Darren Hardy. Those are some
Yep.
of the most amazing book, which gives you the right message and the mindset.
Yes, yes.
So, can you tell us key takeaways from the book?
Well, basically the book is a story about this couple that is struggling, and this guy is in the story. He thinks that this business deal is going to transform his life in ways that he doesn't realize it's not what he's really after. And so he thinks that making more money is the key to happiness when, basically he finds this mentor. And by the way, that book entirely is based off of real life stories within Lifeonaire. And
Oh, really?
the whole book. We
Oh,
just
wow.
changed. Yep, we just changed names and made it to a cohesive story, but it's all true stories.
That's amazing.
And yeah, man, it's really cool. And the biggest takeaways are like, hey, let's look at your life now. And number one, figure out a couple things. One, are you living the life you want? Like, and I mean, truthfully in every area. And if not, why? For one, do you have the freedom you want with your time and your schedule? And do you have the relationships you want? And, what's most important to you? The book is really good at helping you figure out, like, have I been chasing the wrong things? What's most important to me, and how do I get what I really, really want? And so it kind of helps with people first recognizing that they have a challenge. There's something's not right. They're on the wrong path. That's the first step, right? Is that acknowledgement. The second path is kind of the second step is figuring out what you actually want. And the third step is like, how do you get it? And so, for instance, one of the things that is outlined in the book is this thing called the 4 stages of financial prosperity. That has really become a kind of pivotal Lifeonaire teaching, where we walk people through 4 steps to achieving the financial prosperity, which will also help with time and knowing what you want to do with both the time and the money.
That's pretty interesting, and it's perfect, right? You want to know why, what, and how, right? Once you figure that out, you know exactly where you're going to be.
Yes. And here's the thing: if you don't have a why, you're not going to do the what.
Nope.
And so this is where, like exactly like you said, you need all 3. And I'll tell you, we also have and just, of course, like to help people. And they talk about this in the book as well. We do these 3-day events, and we help people discover these 3 things. And I tell people all the time, like, listen, once you figure out the why and the what, the how is the easiest part. And people are like, come on, like, if it was, and it's so true. Like, that once you figure out the why and the what, you'll know what the how. It just kind of works that way.
So tell me more about the 3-day event. Of course, I could not attend when the event was scheduled here in San Jose, California. But what do you guys go much deeper than the book, or how do you work one-on-one, or how does that work?
Oh, first of all, man, you need to get out to this event. Let me tell you, it's incredible. This is like, and I know this isn't, I don't want to turn this into a commercial, but anybody listening right now, you have to check out this event. And Alpesh, we'll have to talk offline as a way to give your people a special deal.
Yeah, but that would be great.
We can absolutely do that. And here's the thing, like, if this event will help you, the whole point, and they're called their Get a Life Getaway, and the whole point of the event is to figure out, like, what do you really, really want for your life, so that you can later create a business for that life. Because here's the thing. Everyone forgets that the entire purpose of having our own business is so that we can have the life we want. Like, somehow along the path, we get confused, and all of a sudden business becomes our life, and our real life takes the leftovers. And so we help you figure out, like, in every single part of your life, what do you want it to look like? What is that specifically? And then how do you get there? We ask questions like, okay, like, let's calendar this out. Let's figure out, like, how many hours a week you have left for work so that you can really live your vision. How much money is it going to take for you to live your vision?
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things are important to you, and, do you need to prioritize? And so I'll tell you and just as a side note, we've been doing this event for over 10 years now.
Oh.
Over 10,000 people go through it. And it is, and we've learned a tremendous amount of things, and it takes us a full 3 days with people to go through this to figure out what they want. Because I'll tell you, it is so hard to figure out what you want on your own. Because, you know, a phrase I use all the time is like, listen, you can't see the label when you're in the jar, because you're in the jar, right? You need other people, and you need other people to kind of poke and prod and encourage you. And so we sit down and spend a lot of time helping people figure this out. And so it's a tremendous thing. It's also, I'm leaving tomorrow to do another event here, and we get to do about one a month all over the country. And so, yeah, you should check it out. Yeah.
Right. So that there is no shortcut then. It's a 3 days.
It's not, man. Yeah.
If they are working with you and your team, otherwise it could take a lifetime to figure
it could.
this out.
That's such a good point. You know, and I tell people, I'm like, listen, I will never say that you couldn't figure this out on your own, because that's simply not true. But if it takes us 3 days, and we've been doing this for 10 years with over 10,000 people, do you really think you can like do it quicker than us? Like, and plus, what are the chances of somebody on their own unplugging from their day-to-day life for that amount of time to really focus on this? It's very unlikely.
Yeah, and that's the biggest problem with everyone, including me, right? Unplugging yourself or procrastinating, right? One day I decide that I'm going to take care of this. I will have this action plan by end of the day. But, you know, I get sidetracked, I procrastinate, and by the time I finish that plan, it's 30 days, 40 days, right?
I know, man. You just got to commit. And, you know, so it's interesting when I tell people about the event, I'm like, listen, I'll say this is for everyone that wants a better life. If you don't want a better life, don't bother coming. You're wasting your time. And I'll say there's only 3 reasons why you're not going to come. 1, you're too busy. Hello. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're too busy, that means you need this.
That means you don't have life.
right. You don't have life. Do you see the irony here? Right. And then the second one is that they think they can do it on their own. The third one is actually, this is bizarre. This is fear. People are actually afraid to realize that they are in control of their life. Like, some people go through life rather preferring to be a victim, to not take responsibility. And it's that, believe it or not, I run into that a lot, because all of a sudden people will have to self-examine themselves, which quite frankly can be painful sometimes. And so, you know, that's another reason people don't go.
That third point, fear, reminds me of a book called Who Moved My Cheese, right? That's a great book, right? People are not used to changes, right? It's hard for someone to make change, right? It's even a habit, right? Bad habit or good habit, it's hard.
So right.
So who should read the book Lifeonaire and apply the principles?
Man, anybody who feels like life doesn't look exactly the way they thought it would at this point, or someone who knows, like, within themselves, like, I know something's not right. Like, you know, when I got that first job, I couldn't imagine. I'm like, this can't be what life is all about. It just can't be. Like, you know, if you tally up the total number of hours you work and then multiply that out by your average lifespan, it is crazy how much time we spend working, and that cannot be right. Like, we should not, you know, live to work. And so if life doesn't look exactly the way you want it to in any way, and you see where you can improve, read the book. If you know you're capable of more, but you have been struggling how to get there, read the book. If you want to learn more about how to kind of these 4 stages of financial prosperity and how you can apply it to your life, read the book. If you don't have control of your schedule, if you don't have control of your finances, read the book. All of these people will benefit tremendously from it.
So does age really matter for the person who is reading the book?
You know, we've had people as young as 13 come out to these getaways.
Nice. I wish I was 13 when I reached that to dad or something like this.
Me too. I wouldn't have wasted 15 years in school. Like,
exactly.
And we have people as old as 82. And I remember one guy, I'll remember this like it was yesterday. I go up to him, I'm like, hey man, like, I must have been a little too surprised in my tone when I said, hey man, like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 82. I'm like, wow, that's really cool that you're here. He's like, I'm old, but I ain't dead. I said, I'm like, cool, man, that's awesome. Like, he's like, you know what? He's like, quite frankly, in all seriousness, I am older and I have less time. Like, you know, some of these people in their 30s and 40s, they think they're going to live forever. I'm telling you, like, I'm knocking on death's door now, and I'm going to make every moment I have until the
Yeah.
end,
Every moment
what I want to
counts.
do.
Yeah.
He's serious, right?
Yeah, it is serious. So that's great. So, are there any good candidates or bad candidates who can apply these principles? Or I think we already spoke about who could
Yeah.
apply these principles. But have you
Man,
seen?
one of the things struck me that as you're talking here is, I didn't mention this. If you're somebody who is running around with your hair on fire, busy all the time, you never have enough time for what's most important. Like you can't, you're eating fast food all the time because you don't have time to cook, or you're missing your kids' soccer games, you're missing date night with your husband or wife, you haven't been to the gym in months because you're too busy. Read the book, because it provides a perspective. And by the way, I hope I don't offend any of your listeners when I say this, Alpesh, but I believe that busyness is a sign of intellectual laziness, a lack of creativity, and fear. Like if you're busy, you're not working with your head, you're working with your hands.
Something's wrong.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's see, you are working hard, not smart.
That's true. Absolutely true.
That
And I know that's a cliche, but it's so true. Like if you're not doing something right, if you're busy, you're just not.
And have you seen this program or the book does not work for someone? So are there bad candidates?
People that are kind of, well, this is going to sound mean, but people that are kind of stubborn and they think they know it all. Like, that's any book though, right? You're just not, if you're not
Right.
open. And here's another thing too. This book is a relatively countercultural. Like we present a very different side of things that isn't very popular. Like, in our culture, we tend to sensationalize and look up to tremendous material wealth, to reward
Yes.
busyness. Like, if you're super busy, it's almost like a badge of honor. And so
Yes.
you have to be open to a very different perspective. And I don't say that anybody should read the book and blindly accept everything we say in there. But if you're open and you see whether or not some of these apply to you, and you just let it percolate and let it simmer within your mind, I promise you will find things in that book that will apply directly to your life.
Oh, that's awesome. That was very helpful. Anything else we did not speak about or we forgot?
I, I don't think so, man. The only thing I would say is, like, just remember for all listeners here that are pursuing wealth, keep it in perspective, because, and I'm not just talking anecdotally, what I've seen in people. I know some tremendously wealthy people that are unhappy. And here's the biggest lie that I've seen with wealth. When you're poor or middle class, you can lie to yourself and say that it's the money. Like, hey, if I had more money, I'd be happy. If I had XYZ, I'd be happy. If I had the house, the cars, the motorcycles, the airplane, whatever.
Right.
But the truth is, when you get to that point, and listen, everybody can become wealthy if you work hard enough. And by the way, it doesn't impress me anymore when somebody makes a lot of money. I want to see
No.
if they make a lot of money and they have a life.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
This is a land of opportunities, right?
yes.
So anyone can, with having a small business idea or investing in that one stock, you could be a millionaire.
That's right. And so the lie that you can tell yourself only so long until you get to the point where you are financially wealthy and your life is not what you thought it would be. That's a very sad day, because chances are you've spent a very long time telling yourself that lie, and now you've gotten the money and you're unhappy, and that hits people very, very hard. So let me just save everyone the discovery of this on their own. The money's not going to make you happy. I'm not talking about abject poverty. Like, that's certainly something where money can help, but within a certain range, you have to have these other parts of your life that are functioning and that you love, and you have fulfillment and all these other parts. And then the money is great, but you have to focus on the life first, money and wealth second. And then, by the way, you will actually make more money. Believe it or not, I tell people this all the time. They think I'm nuts. When you focus on life first, you will make more money, because, as you said earlier, you have a why, right? If you don't have the money, you're going to sacrifice your life, and now all of a sudden you have a motivator. We're probably out of time here to talk about studies that show this, but essentially, like, this has been proven over and over again. So focus on life first, the money will come.
That's awesome. That's a great tip. Thank you so much, Jason.
I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks again. And we can definitely chat about the program or the event, after this podcast.
Sounds fantastic.
Thanks again.